Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Friday, the 22nd of July. Time is flying. I'm just going to apologize right now. If you pick up some extraneous white noise, it's my fan. It is stinking hot in this office and I'm trying to stay cool. Um, this Anglican priest doesn't need to be a melting heap here. That wouldn't be very pretty. So yesterday I talked about Holy Scripture and the Bible in particular and how people use it and abuse it and how it should be used and things like that. Great conversation back and forth about, the Bible not as a buffet, but things like that. And really intense conversations and really great questions. I am totally impressed by people's willingness to learn a new thing and to share what they've learned, and that totally helps me to grow and to become a fuller human being and a priest. And it allows me also to sort of know where people are at. I have a sense of who my own congregation members are, where they are in their spirituality and their faith life and things like that. But it's such a tiny little microcosm of the world. And it's really cool. It's interesting for me to hear things from out there. And so I really appreciate that. And we had some really, really beautiful, supportive back and forth with one of the commenters who shared some really personal stuff. And I am more and more convinced that we do indeed, really do have our own church community, filled with sinners and saints. All of us are both. Some are believing and some aren't. But I still think, Jesus didn't simply hobnob with the Jewish peoples. He hobnobbed with whoever was hanging around. So as far as I'm concerned, you don't have to be a Christian to hang out here or to be part of my church. You just need to be willing to hang out with us, the various diverse people that we are, and the stuff that we bring, and the baggage that we drop on each other because we know we're safe to do that. The questions we ask and the real, honest sense that we bring. I mean, can't ask for more than that in church. It's what it's all about. So, welcome to the Church at Home church, I guess. But I was feeling kind of heavy. It's been a long week. My husband had to have surgery on Tuesday. Nothing serious, just an injury. But it required us going to Edmonton on Monday overnight because he had to be in the hospital, like checked into the hospital at 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. And it's a 2.5-hour drive from where we live. So we went up Monday night. I got up at 5, took him to the hospital, went back to the hotel room, said my daily office and things like that. Had a little nap. And then when I checked to the hospital, the hotel, I went and wandered around Walmart for a while. Nothing better to do. But it's just been, this week has been hectic, and I just haven't been able to wrap my head around stuff. And this Church at Home is pretty much the only normal thing I have been doing on time, almost on time, every day. So thank you for being my touchstone here. But I am thinking, because my head is kind of like, ooh, that I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing. I've hit Friday and I'm nowhere near done. I have a funeral tomorrow and meeting with the family today, and not quite prepared yet. So I'm going to be working on that today. So I thought, you know what? I need to talk about something a little less heavy, a little bit of fun. Something I was doing Wednesday night. I was so fried. It was the first day back at work after having been to Edmonton, and I was, my brain was a million miles around, running around and taking care of Rob, make sure he's okay, got what he needs. And so, what? I'm just going to sit down and watch TV. He's a big Lego guy. We have a whole room dedicated to Lego, and for some reason, his Lego ends up on our dining room table with his Mac computer so he can watch documentaries while he does his Lego. So he was in the dining room ensconced on his chair with his feet up, and he was doing his Lego, and I thought, I'm going to sneak in the den and I'm going to watch TV. And I watched a couple movies on Netflix. No, it wasn't Netflix, sorry, it was the W Network, because it was Christmas stories, Christmas movies in July. And but first of all, I watched something on HGTV, and I just caught the tail end of it. And it's a designer. She's designing her own home, and she was working on putting in a garden. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But first of all, what I want to talk to you about is Godwinks and the Guardrails of Reality. Those moments of serendipity that really just like, wow, that didn't go the way I wanted it to, but wow, did it ever turn out better than I could have hoped. So first of all, the Godwinks. There's a series of Christmas movies out there on W Network that are really not Christian in your face Christian, but I think they have a significantly Christian, if not Christian, a faith-based background. And they tell these stories of Godwinks, and they're true stories of things that happened. And so a Godwink is, I guess, something like a coincidence. Something happens or doesn't happen that was supposed to happen that leads you to something else, that leads you to something beautiful. In this case, they're love stories. So they're stories about people who ended up together by Godwinks. Something happened, and I caught on to the tail end of this story, and it was about a doctor who was volunteering in a small town, and when she was there, she met another person who was volunteering with her at this community center, and they started to fall in love. But of course, she had a boyfriend back home, and he had a life to live, and all that stuff. And she was really convinced that this is not right because she had Danny back home, and what would that be? But she started realizing she really didn't love Danny. They'd been together for 5 years, but they'd grown apart. And it was more out of sort of habit that they were still together, still dating. And she was really had feelings for this gentleman. Of course, in the drama of the movie, she goes back to her home and she flies home, and then she eventually breaks up with Danny, and then she flies back. There's an accident and she saves his life. Well, the thing is, at the end of the movie, you find it was true. And that this couple has been together for like 50 years. Those moments, when God winks, says, hang on, it's sort of the more subtle form of hold my beer, I think. When God steps in and does something, or God sort of throws a little monkey wrench into the mix and see what happens. Wonderful things can happen with these God winks. And then the other thing, the Guardrails of Reality. This is from this HGTV, or no, I think it was on the Magnolia Network, actually. Chip and Joanna Gaines Network. And she's a interior designer that my husband likes, because the first thing we ever heard her say was, I like to talk to the client to ask them, what do you need of this room? How does it flow? How are you going to live in here? Which was so different than most designers who sort of go in and tell the carpenters and the family and everybody, this is what we're going to do and this is why and blah, blah, blah. My husband hates that. It just drives him nuts. But this woman was so gentle, and she was so patient and listening, realizing that what she's doing is to enhance another person's life. So the best way to do that is to actually talk to them about how their life needs enhancing. We're watching her at the tail end of doing her own home, a massive, like a mansion in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And she went to her contractor and said, well, I want to put a garden over by where the garage is going to be. He said, well, we're not going to get to the garage till next season. And she said, well, I want to get working on the garden. He said, well, you really shouldn't, because with 10 guys walking around and all the equipment, we're just going to ruin your garden. And she was really disappointed. However, unlike lots of other designers who just jump in there and say, well, I wanted what's going to happen, she said, okay, well, I understand. I guess I'll have to wait till next season after the garage is built to put in my garden. Okay. In the meantime, her daughter had gone to see a landscape architect and had shown pictures of the house and everything, and he had taken a look at it and realized her house takes up basically the width of a city block. Like, her front yard faces one street and her backyard faces the other. So it's the whole width of this area. And the architect, the landscape designer, said, why wouldn't you put your grand garden at the back of your house where people then driving by can see it? And it was like, whoa, excellent. What a beautiful idea. And she was able to incorporate a driveway and a couple of parking spots. And it looked absolutely phenomenal when she was done. And it balanced the architecture of the house. And it had lots of whimsy and beauty. And it really made when you looked at the pictures of before and after, you just had to think, wow, it would not have been what it is now with this garden here. And she referred to those as the guardrails of reality. When you're driving along and you think, this is what I want to do, and you've got your heart set on it, and then a guardrail pops up in front of you and doesn't let you go and veer off to that, and you realize that guardrail saved you from doing something that you shouldn't have done and kept you on the path toward what you should do. And I thought, What an incredible way of looking at things, the guardrails of reality. And then after that, I watched this thing about Godwinks, and it was like, you know what? I needed that tonight. It was a good Wednesday night. Eating some popcorn. Chicago mixed popcorn. Have you ever tried that? It's cheddar cheese popcorn with caramel popcorn. It's to die for. It's so good. You can get it at Costco, at least in Canada. But anyway, I digress. So I got thinking, and after today, the heaviness of the stuff we were talking about, I thought, what are those guardrails of reality, and where are those Godwinks that happen in our lives? Because I bet they're everywhere. I know that I'm going to spend some time this weekend thinking about the wonderful ways that my life has become what it has because of those guardrails of reality and Godwinks. Quick one, real quick. One for me. When I was probably ordained 5 years. I was in my first parish. Got a phone call from one of my young parishioners, 15 years old. She called me because her friend is a cutter and had gone too far. She was really hurt herself, and the hospital was being jackasses about her. In Canada, that doesn't happen very often. We're very fortunate. But anyway, so it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night, and Alicia calls me up and says, can you meet us at the hospital? I'm going to get her there right away. I say, oh, absolutely, I'll get there. And I talked to the doctor, and we got things taken care of. But I realized I don't have any ability, any training in crisis counseling, because that's pretty much what I was doing. The next day, my alma mater, the University of Western Ontario, Huron College, a divinity school, sent out an email about courses coming up in September. This was in August. In September, and one of them was a crisis counseling course. And it was offered on Thursday afternoons, and Friday afternoons are my day off. And my parents live in London, which is where the school is, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to take that course. I'm going to go there and spend the night at my mom and dad's and have my day off Friday, just hanging out in London where there's things to do. I lived in a small town. And that'll be great. Well, I took that, I went and I started auditing that course. And what I discovered was there was a young man in the library who was in first year university, first year of his master's degree, and we became friends. And because I got to meet him and become friends, eventually we got married. I would never I can't foresee a reason why Rob and I would ever have met had it not been for me recognizing the need to take a crisis counseling course at exactly the same time, unbeknownst to me that my college was going to offer that. Who knew? A Godwink, perchance? Maybe a guardrail of reality? I don't know. But it's got a happy ending. We're coming up on our 17th anniversary in 2 months. And I don't think I ever believed I'd get married. I hope to, but I didn't think I would. So I think that God did a good thing. I hope that God's doing some really good things for you. Please take some time to comment in the comments and tell me about your Godwinks or your guardrails of reality. They don't have to be happy, but hopefully they led you to a better place. Have a great weekend. For those of you who wish, I will be online on Sunday morning with our little mini worship for our parish and sermon and prayers and things like that. And I will be back on Monday morning, the 25th, with Church at Home with Rachael. God bless you, everybody, and thank you so much for being part of my community. I really enjoy getting to know you, and maybe someday I'll get to know you in person. God bless.